Welcome back, everyone. This is Only Run Very Noob, bringing you more Bravo gameplay on the Talishar client. Today we are playing against Katsu the Wanderer. I do like to go fist buckler into this matchup, citing out the pummels, the sigils, and the zealous beltings. Pummels are alright, but it's always kind of something that's on the chopping block if I'm running Titan Fist. A 3-card hand to make a surge and send 8 is just not quite as good as a 3-card hand to surge and send 10. We win the die roll and we choose to go second. In the aggro matchups, I like to go second. I like the free tempo. We end up having a hand that would have been very good if we were on the play, but results-oriented thinking is not what we do on this channel. Never block the first Kodachi, and I almost always block the second Kodachi, because I imagine I'll be able to block with 3 cards, because they're going to want an arsenal, and we still get to keep the Starstruck, which is definitely a key aggressive attack. This matchup I like to, well, in most matchups I like to tempo my opponent, but this is definitely one of the matchups where we can fatigue them by attacking. They fatigue themselves with Bonds of Ancestry and Hero Power, so we just try to stay mindful of what threats they still have in the deck and hope to outvalue them and punish them for having no armor. We don't draw 3 blues with our Starstruck, but we do draw 2 blues and a Crippling Crush. So here I'm looking to just make a surge and throw a Naked Crippling with no Dominate. Rouse the Ancients doesn't really come into play here, but when I pitch that card I always try to be mindful to wedge it in between 2 attacks that can turn it on. But I can't imagine the endgame against Katsu would be one where we get to hold 4 cards and not just immediately kill him, so we'll probably just be blocking with this stuff later and hammering. But we'll see how it goes. They have a fair number of 3 blocks, but they do have a lot of 2 blocks, so just a Naked Crippling is always pretty good. Katsu gets a lot worse with less cards in their hand. They just can't really use their hero. He gives us his full hand. I'm not sure if that's correct. I think he probably should just save the 100 wins to attack for 3 instead of have it block for 2. Here it's fairly easy. We just make a surge and throw Command and Conquer. The 2 cards behind were threatening pummel, but I don't imagine that they can play around it too well. They could have reinforced a line, so maybe they're more inclined to block 6 here if they have reinforced behind. Sometimes when people are afraid of pummel, they'll just let their arsenal go as well. So they'll just no-block you. So I want to talk a little bit about something I've been trying more recently, which is Tunic into aggressive matchups. I've really found the only matchup I like it, like the only aggressive matchup that I really like to have Tunic is against Phi. The armor is decent against Phi to stop the mask, but it's not as critical to stop on hits as against Katsu, and that's why you still see tech plating here instead of Tunic. I believe Katsu really struggles with armor. Katsu is like my backup deck. It's probably the deck I have the most games on outside of Bravo, and I always kind of struggle with armor. Because with Katsu, you basically always are at a disadvantage when it comes to armor block. They literally just have 2 block on their armor, and that's it. He throws a surging here. I don't think we really have to block it. We do to mitigate damage, but we have to assume if he's playing surging here that he has a gust wave in his arsenal. Not really excited about Terra Sunder for 5 with him still having his 2 block on his armor. So maybe I'm supposed to just block 6 on that thing. And here we just sink, sort of daring him to use breaking scales. Because he would be able to draw 2 cards off breaking scales here, so it'd be kind of juicy for him. But then that opens up our Terra Sunder, and it prevents him from utilizing his breaking scales on defense. And he does go for it, so he gets to draw 2 cards, which is nice. We don't have to deal with breaking scales for the rest of the game. Oh, it looks like he undo. Which, yeah. I think not utilizing your armor block for something key is kind of a big mistake against Bravo. So I think I still do Terra Sunder. No, I just throw a Debilitate for 6. If he wants to keep his whole hand, it'll turn off his first Kodachi, most likely. But he might be inclined to give us a 3 block, and I can arsenal the Terra Sunder, hopefully to use it when he has no armor. I think there is a case to be made for just Terra Sunder for 5 and getting the armor out of the way. Of course, not blocking the Kodachi for 0. Surging. I'll give him equipment here, because it'd be really nice to dominate the Crippling Crush. And if he doesn't have another Gust Wave, he doesn't really get to do much. He does have the other Gust Wave, so here I think I block 5? Or no, I still block 4. I think I'm trying to bait that Breaking Scales, which gives him even less value here than last turn, because it doesn't activate Mask, but maybe he just wants to trigger Katsu, and he already knows he has a 0 cost card in his hand to discard to it. We quite like getting the Breaking Scales without him blocking with it here. It's kind of a little value leak from him. He gets to draw a card, and drawing a card is generally worth more than the 1 point of block. But Bravo really does punish not having armor. Gets rid of E-Strike and goes to get Bonds, presumably. I'm not sure that giving up all my armor super early like this is actually good. I might have just kind of gotten greedy with the hand I have. And he gets Dishonor. He must not have had a Fluster Fist, because Dishonor isn't turned on, like the on hit isn't turned on. It's just 4 damage, which is fine. You know, Bond's 0 for 8. Good stuff. I might even just take this 4 and let him pop his Breeze Riders if he wants, but the Mask trigger doesn't do much. Oh, I guess I don't. Yeah, I think I'm supposed to just let him hit for 4 here. That way, if he wants to give me his last armor to utilize the 2 cards in hand. But as it's checking out, I think I kind of wasted a lot of armor there. Probably fairly poor by me, maybe getting a little greedy. One of the ways you can lose to Katsu is just by not utilizing your armor properly, which I think is exactly what I did this game. You definitely want to leverage your armor for on-hit effects and to keep bigger hands later when you can just like block 1 on the second Kodachi and not let him trigger Mask. Here we're just looking to take damage. With him having such a small hand, we're not too afraid of anything. And then we could just throw a Naked Crippling and Arsenal Crippling. Just had to pause for a little bit there. I don't know, my cat was getting into something. Had to go see what he was trying to do. He's a chonky boy, so he could have been trying to get into the food or something. So I give him armor on the second Kodachi there because I want to keep all my cards. He doesn't have one floating, so I'm not too afraid of letting this hit and having him Katsu into another spinning wheel kick. Probably can just Katsu into like a Fluster Fist. But once we go crippling into crippling, that should... The first one gets all the tempo because he has to block out, and then the second one should get us the life lead and remain like at advantage having the tempo. Playing this game very aggressively. Normally against Katsu, I like to take it a little slower and will him down with fist and sort of count their threats and almost fatigue them. But I guess with the cards that I saw I had, I just wanted to sort of go for the throat. Which might have been greedy and probably not as good as being disciplined. Because there's always a chance that we get full tempo and we do nothing with it. He ends up just taking 11 and discarding 2 cards. It's very interesting. Maybe he had like an Art of War in hand and a bunch of 2 blocks, so he couldn't have blocked 8. Yeah, I'm going to just rewind a little bit to see what he discarded. He discards 5 cards worth of block, so yeah, if he has another 2 block and a 0 block, he couldn't have blocked it anyway. Gonna go ahead and give him a card here. He has the Ancestral, but you can't really play around the Ancestral, you just gotta make him use them. You know, if I had like a Fate Foreseen or a Sink Below, maybe I could have baited it out, but I generally just let them use it. It's not especially scary when he only has a 3-card hand. He's already played 2 Gust Waves, so he could go get his last Gust Wave, and then that would run his deck out of Gust Waves, and that's like a key threat that you're trying to not let hit. But I'm definitely trying to not block anymore so I can dominate this crippling, because without a Surge I can't even throw it if I block with another card. So that might be kind of good for him if he goes and gets the Whelming. If he goes and gets Whelming, I might just be forced to block it and move on, make a Surge and hammer for 4, and then I have a Crippling Crush and Arsenal still with a Surge. Generally, I block with Crater Fist as my first 2-block equipment in case I ever want to pop it, and then last after it has a counter for the same reason in case it ever wants to pop. I don't really activate Crater Fist that often at all, though. I might have 2,000 games on Bravo, and I've probably cracked Crater Fist like 4 times. So just hammer. We have the life lead. I ended up not using armor there. I just gave him a card so I could save some armor. Which is interesting because like 2 turns ago I wasted all my armor and now I'm being conservative with it. So it's almost like I'm valuing it differently at a different point in the game. Because a Surge would have been very good with Crippling Crush and Arsenal. So maybe the armor block helps me keep a bigger hand later on, because now I have 2 turns of blocking the second Kodachi and kind of denying the mask trigger. But that reasoning would probably have me not waste all my armor like 3 turns ago. So sometimes I guess things get a little weird. This game is hard, and sometimes when you're playing, you make decisions that you later disagree with, like I am now. He just throws a Lord of Wind, which is I have no clue what that indicates. Like, why didn't he block the hammer? He had 3 cards behind. Like, what could they possibly be that he would want to keep them instead of blocking the hammer? Like 2 reinforce the line in Art of War or something? It's like it has to be a very specific combination of cards for a hand to be so bad that you don't block to mitigate damage, but then also can't utilize them on offense. So it's kind of nice we draw one of our threats, Command and Conquer, that allows us to make a surge. Command and Conquer and Spinal Crush are really the only ones that give you like that free 1 floating after pitching the necessary blues to make a surge. Always nice when it lines up with a Crippling Crush or Starstruck in Arsenal, or perhaps even a Chokeslam. So here there's a couple things we could do. We definitely just want to block with the Fate Foreseen, because at the end of our next turn we want to have a threat in Arsenal. He throws a Snatch. You could decide to just throw the Crippling, or you could dominate Spinal. I think both are reasonable. I think I dominate Spinal, it looks like, and I think that's probably the worst the worst play out of the two. It's not bad, but like I said, he didn't block the turn before, so he probably has like Art of War or Reinforce the Line. Reinforce the Line would make it very easy for him to stop this. Plus, Spinal Crush is playable no matter what off 2 blues, and Crippling Crush isn't. So if we play the Crippling Crush off 2 blues because we have a Surge and Arsenal the Spinal, that still allows us to block with 2 cards, then make a Surge and throw Spinal Crush. Where if we dominate Spinal Crush, now next turn, our Crippling Crush will require 3 cards. Pretty easy math once you get into it, but it's probably definitely better to just throw threats off 2 blues than to be forced to save a third. And we do see the Flick Flack, so that's unfortunate for us. Our misplay costs us a little. We do have the life lead. We have a little bit of armor. I think I just let this hit because I want to dominate a Crippling or a Starstruck and then Arsenal the other one. And we have a life lead, so we can take a little bit of damage here. He doesn't trigger Katsu, so that means he has the Whelming in hand, or not. So yeah, we really get to get him here. We're doing the Crippling because I imagine the only card that he wanted Katsu away for more damage is like a Defense React. And Crippling makes it harder. He has to use his Breeze Riders, the 3 block, and then the Defense Reaction Arsenal. But I guess he doesn't even have that, so we see Cyclone Roundhouse, which is an interesting one. And at this point, this game's kind of out of reach of him. We see him finally pop his Cross Strap. I'm just going to Fate Foreseen this Surging Strike. If he has Ancestral Empowerment, that's fine. We top the Spinal. Perhaps with this game state, I'm supposed to block with an armor in front of the Surging Strike in case he has Ancestral. I'm just so used to making them have it, but I think in this game state, you just want to completely shut his option off of being able to go Tutor like a Gust Wave. But with a dominated Starstruck here, he's definitely in a tough spot. Giving us Mask and Breeze Rider Boots and a Flick Flack so that he can stay alive and still prevent the crush to try to throw this big 4-card hand back. But with him being at 2, we can almost just block 9 and send 4 with the hammer and probably win. We just give him 6 block on his Surging. Taking the Kodachis, of course, with no mask. They don't really pose a huge threat. He has even bigger than that, which I don't normally see from Katsu. Of course, I always play Bravo, so that card might be in their 80, but I generally don't see it in the 60 that they present to me. No blocks against Bravo are quite risky. I think I just take this. Yep, the only thing that can really punish me is having another one in Arsenal. He doesn't, we get to just make a surge and CNC. 6 is significantly more than 4 here. It requires 2 cards. And it even has the on hit, which is relevant. If we hammer for 4, he could just like block 3 and have a big hand still. And like I said earlier in the video, Katsu, his power grows exponentially based on his hand size. They definitely just block. He has the bonds, but I think I can just easily take 8 here and then dominate a Spinal Crush, which even gets through Reinforce the Line, because if he blocks with a 3 block and then reinforces it, he still takes 2, which is lethal. So here we just take the damage and win the game next turn, barring any kind of funky... I even Red Unmovable wouldn't do it, so I don't think there's much he could do. Like Oasis Respite could do it, but I mean that would be completely absurd to see out of Katsu. And yeah, that's the game. I think I played that game very aggressively, and I didn't necessarily need to. It ended up working out for me because I just kept drawing heat. Like, most of my turns were crippling, Starstruck, Spinal, CNC. I drew some defense reactions at key times to stop 4 attacks. And sort of baited him into using his gloves, which is very good for us. But hopefully we could both learn a little bit from that game. Me, for one, I think I just need to be more conservative with my armor. And hopefully you guys learn how to play against Katsu a little better. So until next time, thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below about anything at all. I especially like hearing about my misplays. So comment those too. Alright,